Well, he happened to be there. If you were sitting there.
If you missed a
You
flight,
got
it
to
didn't
do
matter,
it.
there was another one in an hour.
Yeah.
And now there is, if
You're
you miss a
right.
flight, or if
Just
a flight
happened.
gets canceled, you're there for the night.
Yeah, right.
I mean, it makes it, for business travelers in particular, very inconvenient.
Yeah.
See?
Did I?
Yeah, I always stare into his eyes. That's how I know.
You couldn't stare into somebody else's eyes today.
I don't, but do you ever watch Big Bang Theory?
No,
No.
You know what?
Do you know who Sheldon Cooper is and how he's like very like regimented, everything? He's really bad, except I'm not as smart.
Depends on how you frame it.
It's really bad.
All right, ready?
Colin, are we good to go? Okay. Frank, we start all meetings with go Birds.
Go Birds. With that.
How about them Chiefs?
Birds not have an excellent draft, huh?
Absolutely.
A plus.
I gotta bring my mug
Yeah.
next time.
Okay,
I gotta bring my mug.
We have to put you in the separate section.
how about a roll call?
Frank Facciano,
I'm here.
Paul Anthony,
Here.
Robert Brooks,
Here.
John Hayes,
Here.
Ron Heckman, Larry Hamburger, Mike Stershik.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Excellent. Welcome, everybody. Is there any public comment?
No, sir.
No public comment. Then may I have a motion to approve the meeting minutes from April?
So moved.
Second.
Second, John. Mike, John, and Ron's here, right? Get
Yep,
that?
got it.
Cool. So, all in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
Say Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Now for the financial statements. Todd? Todd's got a few things today.
Thanks, Frank. Good morning. Before I start, I actually want to point out a couple of things. Scott Nickerson is here from Crow Horwath. He'll be talking about our audit in a little bit. And Shane over there, I don't know if everybody's met Shane. Shane kind of is replacing Karen. And Karen's kind of going into semi-retirement, I guess, or whatever she's doing these days. But he took a lot of the lead on the audit stuff, and he's doing a lot of the day-to-day. So he's doing a great job. So he looks all official over there, so make sure you pat him on the back when you see him. All right. Go over April financials. Okay. Always start off with traffic. This traffic's down a little bit for the month of April, something we anticipated, but again, obviously way ahead of 2021. We got a little used to being best traffic in a long time, but still pretty good. Year-to-date traffic is still ahead of 2019. We expect traffic to be down somewhat versus 2022 until probably August, and then we're expecting to pick up. You gotta remember last year we had a phenomenal summer, and it's kind of hard to follow a headliner year like that and have, you know, numbers ahead of that. But again, all things considered, we're doing well. Bus traffic again, really going up with the expansion of United and American and the bigger buses. So that's good down there. You can see kind of what's going on.
Todd?
Yes.
So there are less seats available this April than
Yes,
last
less
April?
seats available. Our load factors are about the same, but it's just less
So again, less to sell.
to sell. So it's not that we don't have the market for it, it's just less available. So nothing that we're doing, it's just the area does really well as far as supporting the flights. It's just they're not there. Great question. Thanks, Frank. Speaking of load factors, Frank must have known that this was coming. He wanted to kind of, hit that out there. Frank, good job. When we talk about load factor, I think Ann had brought this up a few meetings back. Just kind of seeing where we are. You can see over here, 2019, about 85%. And it's kind of where we are year to date now. A little bit up from that, but about 85% traffic. You can see by carrier, obviously Allegiant is leading the charge, which is good for us because they're obviously the big dog around here. Comparing our traffic to all U.S. airports, again, our traffic is going to be down some because you're seeing kind of the bigger airports, the non-regionals really getting back or surpassing 2019 levels. The regional airports are kind of on that last leg of kind of recovery there, and you see that more when I talk about our peers. But again, some of the things that kind of one-off line for us, I just kind of noted down there as well. We did lose Dulles last year and Detroit last year. Then compares to our peers, which is really our universe, you can see that our peers would love to be in the position that we are, down 5% on seats. And that's really to Frank's point, seats are down 5, but the throughput is down less than that. So we're doing better, even though we're losing seats, our load factors are better. You saw that a little bit better than they were in 2019. And again, our peers would love to be in the same position that we are. Look at Wilkes-Barre down there, Scranton, down over 40%. That's significant. So, although it's not as good as we would like it to be, we're doing pretty well.
Is there a reason that we're losing seats? You might have already explained that, but.
Some of it's the consolidation in the airport industry. And again, it's just regional airports are not on the forefront of recovery right away. They're on the back burner. So,
Canceled flights.
Airlines, are really looking at airline schedules, or reducing schedules nationally.
Gotcha.
And that's really to prevent sort of this catastrophe that we had last summer with canceling flights at the last minute. There's a much bigger focus at the federal level to make sure that we're taking a look at airline schedules and making sure that there's crews to fly them, and cancellations aren't occurring like they did last year. So that means schedules have been reduced.
and some of that legislation is punitive, I think, at some point they're talking about it being punitive for the airlines if they have to cancel flights. So they're all responding to that, and obviously regionals are on the last leg of that. So we're expecting things to come back, but obviously we got to wait for the big boys to kind of get theirs first.
And another, if you could jump back one slide, Todd. And if you look at the lower right hand, see excluding bus service. And bus service is continuing to grow, not just with us, but at other airports as well. So that's something that's impacting everyone, but we had, I think, 24,000 bus seats through April. If I remember the number correctly, that's 10% of
You've got a good memory.
our number,
Yeah,
24,510. That's a lot of seats that are on a bus and not counted.
We're in that graph, that's right.
I spoke to a woman from Hotel Bethlehem yesterday. She loves the bus. They use it, and she swore to me that she went through security here and not there.
Not yet.
I'm like, no.
No, she did. Let her, spread the word.
Thinks that? Yeah.
That's right, it works.
Let her go.
She might have, and then she came back out of security, and then went through it again. That happens.
Yeah, that is true.
But again, all things considered, we're doing much better than our peers. Then I'm looking at,
Once again, that's Breeze or Spirit?
What's that?
Which airline runs out of White Plains?
Breeze.
Breeze.
It's over.
So look at the month of April. Again, we had negative gross income. I think that was important to point out. I mean, we talk a lot of times about, the number of bodies and number of things we have in our budget, but we have room to expand, and I'll talk about that a little bit further. But the fact that we had negative gross income and we still had positive income, much better than budget, is a positive sign. And that, number 2, is one that I lose sleep over if it's not positive without CARES, because as we move forward, obviously, CARES won't be there, and we have to be self-sufficient without CARES. So the fact that you can look at that number there, for budget, we had 207, and we're doing really well at 525,000. So again, it's nice because we're talking about continuing to expand, and we have conversations with bank, and you know this. If you can't handle what you have now, you don't even talk to me about adding more. So it's a good thing for us, and it just talks about the vitality of the airport overall. Again, this is year to date. Again, without CARES, if you take that number of net income for the budget without CARES, it's a negative number. It's a negative number without CARES. That number there includes over $1 million of CARES. And you can see that budget and net income is $752,000. It would be negative without that CARES. So the fact that we're positive without CARES, again, there is a plan for our CARES. We've been working through that, but it's at some point we know it's not going to be there. So we're keeping a strong eye on that one. Overall, traffic up, which obviously directly impacts our parking revenue and overall expenses. And a lot of that we talked about before is our winter. I mean, in the winter, you see that even on our payroll because we pay a premium for snow removal, the fact that we have a milder winter, bills, electricity, all those, the heating bills are down. So we got off to a good start. That really lets us breathe a little easier as we're in April now, so it's good stuff. And to highlight this, they're green now. This is just something that, I really focus on months with positive net income without CARES and miscellaneous income. You remember we had the, non-recurring, recurring income, so that kind of throws things off. So that's excluded from any of these numbers. So in 19, we had 11 months, 11 out of 12 months. Each month was positive.
For those board members who weren't here when we had the recurring, non-recurring income, if you could explain it for them.
That was for some of our easements and our land easements and some of our land sales. We had those associated, so those rolled under the miscellaneous income line. And there were some pretty big numbers. So,
Technically, it's non-recurring income.
right.
But we had it, at that point in time, we were having it often enough that we came up with the phrase recurring, non-recurring.
But that's your
So we're
phrase.
still trying to exclude it because
You
it's
you
not
got a patent on
operational.
that one. I thought that was a good one.
Yeah.
But again, it talks about, and to John's point, it talks about the fact that these items that are kind of miscellaneous or one-hitters, you can't rely on them long-term. So this just talks about, you can see down in 2022, it's going to be 2020, we have 4 out of 12 months, we had positive net incomes, and most of that was the first 3 months of the year were before COVID. So obviously, that's in there. But you can see year-to-date, no negative months without CARES, so that's good stuff. Then we talk about our profit centers, when you net out everything, including expenses and allocations and everything in there. So you can talk about parking as net. And for people that don't realize why parking, number one, that is the only place where people pay us directly. There's no middle person for parking. We get money from the airlines, but they're the middle person. So then CARES, obviously, for when we were in 2020 and even part of 2021, CARES was the top dog there, which is talking about what we talked about before. We can't rely on CARES to go down. You can see some of the things that changed. And you can see even like aviation services down there, a lot of that is because of the icing and some of those things that we normally make money on, we didn't make as much money on this year, which took it into the negative. Salaries, wages, and top there, again, we call it body count, I'll talk about that in a minute, or head count. I call it body count, but maybe it's mafia thing, but head count. But you can see that's top on there, some of that's head count. But again, some of that is the winter months where we didn't spend as much money on the snow, which we do pay a premium for. And then parking, we talked about that. Interest isn't up there because obviously interest rates have went up and we're making a lot more interest on our money. So that's helping us out there. And Queen City is better than we expected, even though we're losing money, we're not losing as much money as we thought we would lose on Queen City. And then this time we talk about our head count, always important to do that. Again, when you see about that non-personnel number, you can see that it's starting to, now that we're out of that mild winter, you can start to see that we're getting closer to our budgeted numbers on the non-personnel. Head count still not at the full number we have for the budget, so we have room to expand. But you can see on the bottom there, which is really what I focus on year to date, it's hard to grow instantaneously, and it's nice to have room to continue to grow because you don't want to be landlocked. But you go in 2020, full-time, because everybody can get their head around full-time employees. We got 124 in 2021 through the first 4 months. We have 138 last year, and now we're at 147, and we still have room to grow with the 157. So we're continuing to look for folks. And that number continues to go up, but it's nice that we're not budgeted at 147 because we couldn't continue to grow. So it's nice that we're growing. And again, when you're growing the way we are, the only way, and I said this to Tom earlier, the only way that you're going to get to full staffing is when you're saying we're overstaffed and you're trying to kind of lower the count. So the fact that we got room to grow really means that's good that we can breathe easy and people know that we've got room to maneuver, and especially when we have a month where traffic is not as good, we've got some flexibility there. Cash flow is projected cash flow out. We do this for 6 months out just to kind of see where we are in the cash flow. You can see that 913 there for June. We had a big number that we submitted in for our connector, almost 5.2 million. That pretty much eliminates most of that 15 million that we have. So that's kind of in the works there. We hopefully will get that in June. We did submit that a few weeks ago. PFCs up there again. You see with, that service number there, we have to talk to them about the bridge because of the rack fee is taking a lot longer to receive than we anticipate. And we've extended that. Actually, we did get the notice that, hey, you guys are supposed to pay the full rack fee this month because it's 2 years. And we said, whoa, we didn't get the money yet. So we're working on extending that now with the consortium. Actually, that's with Bolton and the connector stuff. We're working on extending that to the third quarter because, again, all these were supposed to close 2 years from which is June. So we need, basically another quarter on the full connector to kind of finish things out. And then we said to the end of the year on the rack fee, and hopefully we'll get the money by then.
On the financing, do we have all that covered by prior motions and approvals, or do we need to do anything at the board level in order to approve the 5.2 million?
No, we don't have to do anything. That's just the,
Prior motions?
yes, right. Everything's covered. That was the 15 million. We did this one different. In all the other ones, bonds we've done, we got the money right there.
Yep.
But this one is kind of like as we pay it.
Yeah, I remember the
But that's,
discussion.
so everything's all approved. No, I'm glad you did that. No,
Okay.
perfect.
Hey, Todd, on the rack P,
Yeah.
where are we at in the process for that?
I can answer
Yeah.
that. So we are working with the state appointing consultant. They've submitted basically the, what's the term, scope and theory to the state, which is basically the first process of getting the grant. So we're here, we've had actually a lot of back and forth with our consultants and them. In the next 2 months, we should be getting the grant agreement. But with that, I think to Todd's point, everything that we've accumulated, it'll be a quick initial reimbursement once we actually get the grant in place. And then I think after that, they said there's usually about a year lag in terms of the audit where you get your last, I think, 5 or 10%.
So actually, when did the authority apply for a rack P?
Well, there was,
We applied, well, there was multiple rack fees, so.
So
we
which,
got-
so
we
which
got-
rack P are we talking about now?
We're
Well,
talking
it's
about the
kinda
initial
combined.
rack.
All of them, the initial. So
Yeah.
when did we file the initial?
That was that was 2020.
2020.
And we were granted that, state approved that rack P.
Yes.
They approved all of our rack P, right?
yeah.
Yeah, I think we
Authorities.
got awarded 1 million, then we got 2, and then a couple months later it said, hey, you want another million? Yes, so we got that.
Yeah, I remember that one.
But we didn't get any of it yet.
No.
They're slow.
Yeah.
Always have been.
Yeah, they're slow and it's a reimbursement, not upfront.
Oh, we're going through it with their building.
Yeah, I've been involved in one rack in my life. and that
What's
was
your
one too many.
experience been? Something similar?
We moved in 2018.
Okay.
And you got the
That's when we
money?
were approved for a rack P.
Yeah, I haven't gotten
The county right now is the conduit, so
Oh, okay.
the state has gave the money to the county, we're just waiting for that.
I see.
So you're looking 5 years.
5 years.
Now, COVID hit, I
Okay.
kind of get COVID a little bit, but, it's all the paperwork that you have to submit, consult, yeah, Todd, sorry.
Todd just went gray,
Sorry, Todd.
sweating.
But it's your consultant, then the state looks at it, reviews it, everything has to be, which I understand all of that, so it was a process.
Yeah,
Todd needs to go make a phone call, try to extend that deadline.
and what we
Maybe
did,
about 5 years now.
maybe what we did with our consultant we were working with was contacting the state as well, saying, hey, I know you guys are backlogged, is there anything we can do? So that helped
Oh, yeah.
kind of push it a little bit, but it is unfortunately.
It's a process, okay. All right. And actually, the RAC P is flowing through who? Because it's not given to the authority directly, is it from the state?
It is.
Oh, it is because we're an authority?
Yeah.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
awesome.
We have some coordination we gotta do with the county, but ultimately it comes to us.
Right, because we're an authority, we can accept that.
Yep.
All right, thanks. Sorry, Todd.
You really made me think about that 5 years thing. Well, I appreciate that.
You feel better, it's 59 months.
Wow. Wow, you really know how to make me feel better.
That helps a lot, Paul.
That's a spin.
Appreciate that. Thanks a lot. Okay. And a lot of it, you see 19, that changes a lot. Just the timing of our 19 and 21, just the timing. Sometimes it's just a month, but obviously these are big numbers and they affect your cash flow from month to month. That's why they're in there. Even if they change a couple thousand, I usually change it to whatever the numbers are, so they do change. Where we are. And just for everyone, I always like to remind everyone of line 30. Really, when we talk to our banks, that's a line that I always want to point out to them that we've been preparing ourselves for probably 2 years and that number cumulatively of debt service, because we did the draw, so like we've been pretending, like if we had to pay the full connector, so it's like we have the ability to pay, and that's reflected in our numbers. So it just makes them feel more comfortable. And obviously, you know that, it makes you feel more comfortable, like, okay, you guys can afford that, especially when we go and ask for more.
And above that, line 29, the contingency reserve, the just-in-case reserve.
Right.
And that was Eddie. That was Eddie Lozano's.
Eddie's was the contingency, right, but that was the 5% of expenses that we put in there.
Yep.
That he added in there, which was, we added that, geez, how many years ago was that, like four,
It's
five?
more than that, it's
Yeah,
5 or 6.
yeah.
Yeah.
We added that, but this, and I think that's a great point to point out, you know, with the board, over the years, we've kind of evolved, is lack of, you know, the different things, and we kind of adapt certain things that make sense. So, again, we're always adapting, trying to do what makes sense for the authority.
Yeah, and the contingency was one way to address the interest rate,
Yep.
right?
Yeah, cushion against rate movements.
Yeah.
The reality of it is, and we saw in 2020, stuff happens.
Yep.
And you need to be prepared for stuff.
And then this is just kind of showing it out over 12 months where we are at the 69,000 and change, and where we are staying above that 60-day line that we said that we never want to go below. I never want to be below that line ever in life, but we've stayed above that for, you know, on this chart for out for 12 months. So, and you can see the big spike in June when we get that $5 million in there from the connector. Any questions? I know we talked a little long, but I think it's always good to be engaging and organizing, especially when the auditor's here to make sure he knows we're paying attention.
It's all show.
You know.
I'll make a motion to accept the financial statements.
Okay.
I'll second.
John second, and then all in favor to present this?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. All right, BMO lease.
All right, this was in Novus. This is, just to kind of give the history, we had, and John knows exactly, we had a $4 million equipment lease line that we set up with BMO Harris in 2017. And the thought was, we're going to use it over the next few years. We did use a good portion of it. We were able to kind of extend it out. You okay there, Larry? We can get you some help. You all right? But last year, we used about 900,000, I think it was in March. And they said, you got to use the rest of it by the end of the year, that's it. And we have 1.5 left over, and they said the only way you're going to get that is if you got to apply for another one, and that's what this is. So it's just basically equipment. If you go back to the cash flow, when it's like 500,000, so it's just for various things like equipment leases, you know, machineries, machines that we can just finance some of that equipment in there. It's just a cash flow item for some of our tangible, smaller items that we need, mainly for equipment is probably the biggest thing we use it for.
Todd, what's the difference in interest rate now last year versus this year?
Great question. I mean, the rate that we did last year was like 3.3.
Yeah, scroll back up so that I think it was just over 5.
So we're at 5.0 something, I saw.
Yeah.
Okay.
And again, they tend to be the best
There we go.
rates.
505.
Yeah, they tend to be the better rates that we've been able to get as far as lease, you know, as far as equipment lease lines. We have one, I think people know we have one with Fidelity. I'm supposed to have a conversation with them. You've got to get your rate down if you want us to use it at any point. But, you know, it's good to have these things. Obviously, we only use them if we need them, but we do have some planned, about $1 million of that already kind of planned out in our cash flow. At an airport, you got plenty of equipment needs. Plenty of equipment needs, and you want to be able to do it at a reasonable interest rate. Any questions, concerns? Okay.
Right, then, looking for a motion to approve the BMO lease line of credit.
So moved.
Larry, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you for that. And, go ahead, audit.
Then we're going to do the audit. I'm going to turn this over to Scott from Crow, Scott Nickerson from Crow. He's going to walk through our audit. I know he's talked to Frank and and John, but he's going to give the committee an overview.
It's a hard show to follow on. I don't have any color or graphs. Well, good morning. My name is Scott Nickerson from Crow LLP. We're happy to report to you on our audit for calendar year 22. Crow actually works with a variety of airports across the country. Some of our larger ones include MWA, Las Vegas, and San Francisco. I also get to go to Reno too, which is fun. So my team likes to go to Lehigh and Reno are their favorite places to visit.
Okay, really?
All right. Well,
Over Vegas?
well, they like that too.
Is your contract coming up?
What's that?
I just wonder if his contractor's coming here, he's trying to make sure you got a renewal or?
Oh, yeah, another-
Yeah.
In any case, I also want to point out that I did use the bus service and will be using the bus service to Newark later today.
What's your thought on it?
Other than I missed the bus yesterday, but in Philly, but no, I think it's good. I think it's a good way to make up for some of the changes that the airline industry is making as far as how they're serving. I think it's pretty easy to use. The only difficulty you have is going from Terminal B to Terminal F is a long.
Didn't feel like that's a hike.
Yeah, that's the challenge. My bag made it faster than I did, so wow, I guess that's good. In any case, I really enjoy working with the airports. That's why I talk about these things. The business, the economic development, the impact on your community is really what's critical. My job here today is really to talk more qualitatively. Obviously, the information you're getting from Todd every month provides you a lot of detail on the operations of the entity. The audit is just to affirm that the numbers you're getting throughout the year are the same numbers you're seeing every month. I'm happy to report that is the case this year, as it should be expected, but never taken for granted. So our opinion, we provide an opinion on a couple different matters. One is on the financial statements themselves. Our conclusion was that we have a clean or unmodified opinion, which means that the financials as prepared by management we believe to be materially correct and meet the appropriate disclosure requirements. We also provide opinions on other matters related to your federal funds. So we perform an audit on the Airport Improvement Program, which is your significant federal funding source. Typically capital related, but with CARES money, you can use that for some operations as well. So we're happy to report there were no findings, unqualified opinion related to your federal funds. And then lastly, we do some procedures on your passenger facility charges, the uses, making sure you're accounting for the receipts coming in and how those funds are being used according to your plan that's been submitted to FAA. Once again, happy to report there were no issues, clean opinion related to that. So that's the high level qualitative aspect. I'm going to jump a little bit. This.
Hit
If you hit the power button up top first.
Yeah, and hit that, there you go.
Maybe.
Can I go up one? How do I go back?
That one. Gets you back.
All right. Well, I know you spent a lot of time on the income statement. I always like to spend a minute or two on the balance sheet.
Always important.
And I know Todd touches on the cash reserves and cash on hand, et cetera, which I think is great information to understand how cash flows impact the organization. When you look at the airport's assets, obviously the capital assets are the significant portion, just like any other airport. They drive your business, having the capital infrastructure to support the airlines. When I look at the cash balances you had, if you look at that chart that he presented on days cash, you can see the average is about 6 months when you try to draw that line across the middle, which is normal and is a good target. You know, Todd's saying 60 days. That would make me a little nervous too if I went below that, right? But if you look at the cash position and the balance sheet for this organization, it's very similar to even a larger airport. Very heavily intensive capital assets. The funding sources you need are going to be the federal funds to support your capital projects as well as local match and other resources that are provided. The significant impact on capital assets, about $28 million of new capital asset activity, and then you had depreciation of about $12 million during the year. That depreciation is a measurement of the funds you need available essentially each year over a period of time to support your capital assets over the long term. So that 12 million is typically what you're expecting to get from your airport improvement program or other resources at the local level to support the capital operations. One thing that changed, I don't know how to, do you know how to shrink this to see more? There we go, that's good, thank you. One of the big changes for this year, you don't have to see the numbers, I'll speak them. One of the big changes for this year, there's a new standard required related to leases. So if you think about in your own business, the use of operating leases sometimes can be used to hide leveraging of debt. You know, so private companies out there were doing all kinds of operating leases in order to not present a debt on their books. Well, bad things that happen in the private sector come over to the government sector as well. And so this GASB basically says that you need to record the present value of your leases, both lessee and lessor arrangements, and value those on your balance sheet. Fortunately, the impact of that is an asset and a liability, essentially. So it has no impact, essentially, on your income statement. But it does present to readers of the financial statements the commitments you've made, primarily lessor arrangements, you know, the commitments you have from your various customers at providing those activities.
They create issues with leverage covenants in a
Yes,
number of instances.
Yes, and so, yes, so investors and people doing bonds are going to have better visibility to what obligations you have as a lessee and also what resources you have available to you as a lessor. All right, so the significant impact for your organization related to leases is reflected both as an asset and a liability. The GASB 87 related $13 million. So that $13 million is the value of your lessor arrangements on a net present value basis. The caveat to that is within the airline industry, there are some things that are not included in that. What's not included are your regulated leases or anything that's airspace related, which is a significant dollar amount, as well as anything that is less than 12 months or considered short-term leases. We'll see a little more detail on this, but the bottom line is you'll see some new numbers on here every year. Right now it's about 13 million. It's not something you're going to see on the books from Todd every month because it's done, basically we're analyzing it every year. Similar to what we do with the pension liability. You know, not going to make changes every month. We're going to do it based on a year-by-year process. So bottom line, it's going to give you more information to the readers. They're going to understand better what commitments you have and also what commitments to your organization.
So just real quick, if I understand, every land lease that the authority partakes in will be reflected there.
Net present,
Long-term.
net present value. So if you have a 10-year, say a 10-year lessor agreement, it's going to net present value back to today using a discount rate, which is typically like your incremental borrowing rate.
Okay.
So that's the reflection there. It's reflected as a deferred inflow or liability and also an asset on the balance sheet side. So I just wanted to point that out.
I want to make sure we're talking apples to apples. Paul, are you talking about land leases where we're the lessor and we're leasing to another project?
Yeah.
Or are you talking about where the airport might lease something for its own use?
Well, I don't, both, but does the airport lease?
You have $675,000 of lessee
Yeah.
similar. So basically the main point is the lessor, but
Okay,
you're
just
the
want to make sure
lessor.
you guys are talking the same.
Yeah, because you're,
Okay.
and the other piece of this is, as Todd mentioned, you have capital leases. Those are excluded from that, and we call them now a direct financing note. So that program is a program where you actually own the asset at the end of the lease.
Mm-hmm.
Under these other agreements, it's more of that when the lease is over, it's over. There's no transitional property.
Right.
So, all right. All right, income statement. So the way I think about this is we did not have any audit adjustments during the year. So the revenues and expenses that you see be very similar to what you see here. The two exceptions are pension liability and the impact of the change in the pension year over year. And the impact of that was fairly significant this year. You went from a positive, having actual net pension asset of about 1.9 million in the prior year to about a 1.9 liability. The main reason for that is the investment return. As you can imagine, I don't, raise your hand if you had bad investment return on your personal finances, but basically, investment return wiped away essentially from a net pension asset to a net pension liability.
So we had like a 3.8 swing then.
Right, right. So that is, be a big difference you'd have. So from a net income standpoint, that's going to impact your operating loss. That's why you see a 2.9 versus where Todd typically sees more of a break even at that point in operations. That's really the only significant change.
Well, the other significant difference is the depreciation, because we're only showing depreciation on our portion and not on the grant portion. So that's the biggest.
Right, the capital assets funded from grants. So that
We
$12
don't
million
also show the
is going
grant
to be
income as well.
slightly higher than what you're seeing on depreciation from the internal records. I think you're looking at from the standpoint of what you're having to fund.
Correct.
He's looking at from the depreciation he has to fund versus all depreciation on assets funded by both the airport and the federally funded capital. So that 12 million, once again, is that expected money that you need. Todd's looking about how much do I need to come up with versus how much I think the federal government's going to provide to us, or the state.
And we don't show
Yeah, we don't
the
bring
grant income in
Yep.
there as well either, the capital, that's the other
Right.
piece, so they kind of net out.
Right, and then your federal grants from CARES, CRISA, et cetera,
Yep.
and your state grants. So those are the main changes. And once again, those are reflected on an annual basis. Otherwise, we had no other adjustments, so the information you're seeing can be relied on for decision-making throughout the year. That's good. Good news. All right, from a cash flow perspective, we also provide a statement of cash flows, which essentially shows the net cash provided by operating non-capital and capital-related activities. As you can see, a positive cash flow from your operations of 8.3 million. Positive cash flows from non-capital financing, that's the federal grants that are not capital-related, or state grants that were provided to the organization. And then lastly, cash flows from capital and related financing, that's where all the activity is. That's where you're getting your federal capital grant, your state capital grants, your passenger facility charges, bond proceeds of 7.7 million, or from your draw bonds that you drew during the year. As I mentioned before, you had spent about $29 million on capital assets, construction in progress, land improvements, and buildings. And then you also have your obligations to pay your notes and capital leases and bonds. So bottom line, positive overall, 132,000. I think normally what we see with the airports is they're seeing about break-even cash and investments, and the last few years being a struggle, as you mentioned, about managing your budgets. I think every airport we're working with is really focusing on trying to just balance rather than, creating extra cash. The idea that you have the contingency and the extra contingency, I think, is a great plan long-term, because it gives you flexibility to be able to move when you need to move. And not all airports have had that opportunity to be able to build up those reserves, so I think that's a positive. Let's skip that, because I think we're covered. I just want to briefly point out that you guys are required to be responsible for your pension assets. So the pension assets for the union and non-union assets are about 15.6 million. And those are held in mutual funds and held by an outside party. But the organization is the fiduciary for that plan, so we have to report on those assets.
How does our funding level stack up against other airport clients that you have?
Well, the fact that you were in a net asset position last year is better than 99% of that. And I think the investment income impact is similar across all pension plans. If you look at pension plans, they're very conservative, I would say, overall in their investments. So even with a loss of
It was 3.8.
yeah, here's that big depreciation of assets, that $3 million, which really drove you. Now, in the long-term view, that's going to fluctuate. You're going to have good years, bad years. But I think overall, many of the plans are underfunded. So we're fortunate to have this single employer plan that has been well-funded over time. And I think you have to look at it more from a 5-year, 10-year, 20-year lens rather than a single year, because you did build to a positive. And that means you continue to put employer contributions in,
And exit
knowing
contributions.
that sometimes it could fluctuate.
We put
So I
some
think that's
extra.
kind of that long-term view, which is consistent with what I hear in these meetings every time I attend.
I'm set aside reserves is when you're making money. When you're making money, we set aside reserves, and nothing covers risk like cash.
Definitely.
Well said.
All right.
That one is also patented.
Yeah. Chapter 39 of my book.
Cash is king. Yeah.
Cash in hand is the noblest work of God. That's chapter 1.
All right, so when you're talking about cash, sometimes there's good debt, right? And sometimes there's bad debt, depending on who you talk to, right, out there in the marketplace, if you're a Dave Ramsey fan or not. But all the airports we work with typically use debt as a primary way to be able to have the resources annually to do the capital projects. During the year, you had that 7.7 million of new debt. I believe those are draw bonds, right?
Yep.
Where you're only drawing as you need it. That helps you to reduce your interest costs by only drawing the funds when you need them. So I think that's a smart move. I only have one airport that has zero debt, and that's Reno. And they're going to be doing new debt issuance to do some of their capital improvements. But when I speak to their group, I say you're the only one that has no debt. So it's kind of unique. But I think it's really about a time frame of your capital improvement cycle. You know, where are you at in your cycle and how do you build upon that? So, but overall, you can see the interest rates have increased, you know, as you move further in time, which is pretty normal in today's environment. All right. Lease commitments, we talked a little bit about this. On the lessee side, the value of your payments or commitments are about $718,000. So the lessee, you're renting equipment, you have various small equipment rents, copiers, things like that. Not significant, but that's something that did get recorded on the balance sheet. Here we have the net pension liability. I jumped the gun on that, but if you're looking at the financials, you'll see a roll forward of the activity, and you can see that the net invested income on the actuarial report is about 2.8, being the primary driver. Your benefit payments haven't changed much. Your actuarial assumptions have not changed much. So it's really purely that investment return. There's a slight difference here based on just the timing of recognition. This is on a lag, slight lag. All right, the lessor piece, we talked a little bit about the leases. This is a new footnote. Here's the primary impact of what is included in this lease standard. Building, there's 14 leases under building, 1 land lease, advertising leases, and terminal leases. Keeping in mind that the exception is any regulated leases that are on airspace are excluded. The airport industry lobbyists somehow lobbied the standard setters to exclude. Airports are really the only group that have these regulated leases that are excluded. I mean, to be honest, I'm not sure why that was such a big deal, but anything that's basically touching your secure airspace is excluded. So this would be everything else. The thing that it doesn't include is typically is your concession, right? Because those are typically short-term in nature. Overall, we're recognizing about 12.9 or 13 million on the balance sheet. The interest portion, that is your discount, net present value is worth about 3 million. So the total commitments coming in over the next, all the way out to 2047 are 15.9 million. So a lot of disclosure on something that really probably only investors would be looking at, making sure that you have resources coming in to be able to fund that service. It's just another way for investors to look at it. The value of regulated leases was about 9.6 million, so that's the piece that's excluded. So this is the piece that you have that is defined by DOT and FAA related to aeronautical use or basically secure use. So the value of that was about 9.6 million. That's excluded from the balance sheet, but it's disclosed as other commitments. All right, can we flip this? One more time. There we go. All right, there's a lot of stuff here. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. If you could scroll up slightly so we can see the headers. All right. So basically, there's about $11.5 million of federal funding. You can see you have it from a variety of projects that are open under the 2106, which is the Airport Improvement Program. You can see the expenditures incurred under each of those, significant ones being the rehab and the two rehabs, obviously, in the COVID, and then the COVID funding, which is more the operational, about 1.7 million. The reason I put this out here is not to make you squint, but more to realize that it's complex. You have a lot of open grants, a lot of activities. You're constantly looking to develop the story to support those federal funds coming in. And I like to highlight that it just takes a lot of effort to be able to manage those, both from a programmatic standpoint as well as the draws and the compliance on how to use those funds. So reinforcing that it's a critical operational point to have these funds available, critical to comply, because if you lose those resources, obviously you're missing out on funds to support your long-term capital plans. If you could flip back, I'm testing the. All right, maybe just shrink a little bit. Thank you. All right. This is just a summary. You know, if you're referring somewhere in the report where it just summarizes the bottom line and everything. So basically we're saying clean opinion on the financial statements. There were no matters to report. So there was no internal control matters, no issues to bring to your attention. At the federal award level, same results. There were no matters to report. And our program that we audit is the Airport Improvement Program. And you guys do qualify as a low-risk auditee, which means that you've not had historical findings and no issues related to the program. So that is the highlight of the audit. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Yes, you said this up front, but there were no adjusting entries.
No adjusting entries. Yep. Yeah. I think what we try to do, working with Shane and Todd and Karen historically, anytime there's something new or different, they're the first ones to give us a call and say, hey, we got this weird transaction. Todd's coming up with all kinds of weird transactions for us to evaluate. But we try to address those up front. That way, the sooner you start talking about an issue, the more alternatives you typically have on how to address it. And so we try to talk about those things early on to get an idea of what are your alternatives, what kind of information do you need to be gathering. And sometimes it's before a transaction happens where if we structure it this way, how would that impact our reporting, the timing of our reporting, when would revenue hit, when would expense hit, the settlement, the airline settlement,
Yeah.
You always have that last minute adjustment you're making as you settle all the activities for the year. Should we record this in the current year? Can we push it to next year? Is it material? So I think there's a lot of back and forth that helps to anticipate what might happen, what did happen, how the best way to report it. And the reason I tell you all this, because this has not happened at all the clients I work with, where they're, some are very reactive, at the end saying, hey, we got to do this, this, and this. So I just wanted to point out that our interactions with your team have been positive in the standpoint of them recognizing either opportunities or threats to the organization, how they might impact the financial reporting or outside parties looking at their financials. So, any other questions?
Sure.
Now, there's not to say that they don't have room for improvement.
Talk more about that.
One thing I think it's kind of a sign, this whole lease standard was a real challenge for the whole industry. You guys invested in your ABRM software, which is your management software that tracks all your activities. If you hadn't invested in that early on, that actually that system made it a lot easier to do this, implement the lease standard. So I think not only is it a way to organize, manage your contracts and agreements in leases, but it also, you have the forethought to be able to use that to help calculate under the system. So what we found in that is, obviously we didn't anticipate all the information we needed, right? So Shane and his team had to dig in, update ABRM, get more information in there. So it's kind of that learning process. So hey, there's some things that we did need to gather that are probably still in the written agreements, but maybe weren't being tracked within the system. And so there's always an opportunity to move from paper to technology and then be able to apply the technology for more useful purposes. So there's always that balance of being educated on the types of things you might need to track that you didn't know about before. So just an example of kind of bringing it all together of.
So the goal is to use 100% of the technology that we bought, right? For what you're just talking
And
about.
a new
So how much do you
application.
think we're using? Half of it? 70%, 80%?
On the ABRM? Are there things capabilities that it has that we're not using yet?
Some. Yeah, 75 is probably a good number.
Leave that, yeah.
Yeah.
So the goal is to, keep using it to its fullest.
It takes time.
Strive to use it to its
Takes
fullest.
time.
The other piece of it is, if you think about it, their software, this system is prevalent in the industry. They're reacting to changes in industry as well. So ABRM is coming to all the airports with new ideas on how to use the technology as well. But a lot of what they drive, if you're a software company, you're gonna listen to your customers, right? Listen to what their needs are. So it's that constant back and forth of what's changing in the environment. They had to upgrade their technology for some of these standards. They had, so I think there's a back and forth. But I think from a technology standpoint, we're finding that most of our airport clients are really capitalizing on it, not just from a behind-the-scenes office environment, but also from an operations standpoint and customer service standpoint. As you start seeing some of these newer airport rebuilds, the technology they're using to direct people, response times, wait times, technology to gather, even just your TSA information, things like that. Seeing a huge advance of technology. Robots, I was in an airport recently, had robots floating around, rolling around, providing information. So I think that's obviously something that's probably here and now for the larger airports that have the ability to do improvements. But there's also always opportunities to build within the smaller airports as well. So.
It's also proofing the numbers when you first do it. I mean, anytime you use new technology, it's really the initial stuff, it's the setup.
Yes.
You get the benefits on the back end.
Right.
The setup to make sure that the numbers are pulling everything the way they're supposed to, it's challenging, but once you get it set up, there's a lot of dividends down the road, but the initial setup is usually.
But from a back office standpoint, I think the system you have, the ABRM, is the same level of quality that other larger airports are using as well. So I think you're not behind, I guess, would be the main point. Okay. All right. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
So one more motion to accept the financial audit report to present to the board. Mike is the motion, Ron is the second, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you, thank you. New business, if necessary. All right, call for adjournment. So moved. Thank you.
Yeah, I think so. We roll right in. We're close to being on time.
Welcome to the May 25th Business Committee. Roll call, please.
Justin Grimshaw,
Here.
Don Gottschall, James Irwin, Jeff Maskin, Glenn Reedman,
Present.
Chris Worley.
I think I did hear
I think it's Jeff, right?
Jeff Maskin come in.
Here.
Yes, there you go.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Any public comment?
No, sir.
Entertain a motion to approve the minutes from April 20th. So moved. Second? Second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no? Ayes have the sword. You want to take your place up there?
Yeah, I
You're
guess
going to be up there for a while.
I'll be up here for a while.
Yeah.
You have the, over here.
Ryan's going to start with the awarding of a bid for hangar 2 boiler replacement.
Great. Thank you, Justin. Good morning, everybody. This one actually was coordinating with maintenance, so I could have had maybe a 30-second break if Steve was here, but I'll just handle it with what we got. So in coordination again with maintenance and finance, was determined the boiler at hangar 2, it's over 30 years old, when it was inspected by the state, was no longer serviceable, needed to be replaced. So again, working with the teams, got 3 quotes through cooperative purchasing or CoStar's agreements. You can see basically with all of the back and forth, again, we got some attachments in there. The lowest quoted price with the shortest lead time in order to get the boiler repaired before the winter was with Hostler and Jackal of Piston, PA, in the amount of $84,045. What we're looking to do in terms of where we are, and I think last month I presented where we were with our departmental projects, like Exhibit B from our capital budget, is we're looking to add that to the approved amount. So you can see taking it from 4.431 to 4.5 and change. So again, looking for approval to award the CoStar's bid for the Hangar 2 boiler replacement to Postler and Jackal of Pittstown, PA, the amount of $84,045, and increase the approved Exhibit B of the 2023 budget to $4,515,425.
Any questions for Ryan? I'd like to entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. It's approved.
Great.
We'll go right into the runway lighting and electrical vault.
Sure. So this one I'm looking for approval is for the runway 1533 lighting and electrical vault project at Queen City Airport. If you recall, we're currently going through the pavement rehabilitation right now. This is the next phase of that project. It was set up in a base bid, an ad alternate base bid was just the lighting along the entire runway and a portion of taxiway Bravo, which is what they're paving now. And then ad alternate 2 was the acquisition installation of the airfield electrical vault. So we opened bids on May 3rd. Bruce Amerilis of Newcastle, Pennsylvania submitted the lowest responsive and responsible bid. You can see the breakdown of the base bid and the ad alternate. The reason we're presenting it now, the project is to be a future FAA grant, but in terms of the split, we may get 2 different grants because of the funding sources with the bipartisan infrastructure law grants. And due to some of the lead times, as again we've experienced with the connector and just talking to the contractors with some of the electrical components, is starting some of the administrative processes now so that we can begin construction next spring, 2024. Kind of stepping back to Bruce Amerilis, we've actually been working with them as a subcontractor with our Runway 624 program. They specialize in airfield lighting. That's kind of their bread and butter. And we've had, again, good relationships working with them on the runway program, again, during closures and timeframes. So as I mentioned, in terms of the grants, we're currently looking at submitting the grant applications in June, hopefully to get those back August, September. We'll come back to the board for the approval of the actual grants with some of those numbers. So with that, we're looking to approval to award the base bid and that alternate 1 to Bruce Amerilis, total contract amount of $1.789325. But again, that's really contingent on us receiving the grant funding later in the year. That's it. Any questions?
Any questions for Ryan? I think this question is for you. I think I need to abstain from this vote. So can I even call the motion and just not vote, or does somebody else need to call the motion?
Yeah, you just need to make a statement as to why you're, the statement would normally be to the chair of why you're abstaining, so as the chair, you can still
Talk to yourself.
make the announcement
We know you did it.
of why you're abstaining.
But I can still call the
you can
motion and
still-
then just abstain?
Right.
Okay. So I'd like to entertain a motion to accept Bruce Amerilis at $1.789325. A second?
Second.
Just where I make
So
my
now,
statement?
yes.
All right, I'm going to abstain from this vote because Bruce Amerilis is a signatory contractor with my local union. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Ayes have the sword. Okay. We can go to the discussion items. Ryan, you can stay up there and take us through the capital projects.
Sure thing. All right, thank you. All right, so going through our typical projects where we are, again, runway 624. Light blue is really what we've done to date. Light green, taxiway Gulf. here in the middle, and some of the shoulder work we'll kind of get into where we are today. Talked about this before. Package 1 officially been closed out, so that's been removed. Package 2 actually just submitted earlier this week to the FAA for their review for that final closeout. So hopefully that will come off the list here shortly. Package 3, that'll be, again, not far behind, just really working on some of the punch list items. Get that one off the books as well. And I think I've mentioned before, the big thing of closing it out, excuse me, quickly, is getting that final 10% reimbursement. And always something we want, not hanging out there. Package 4, so I mentioned, see on the left is the work they're doing for the taxiway Gulf work, putting in some of the under drains. It's hard to see, but there's actually workers at the bottom of that pipe there. And then, again, some of the electrical conduits and fiber work that we're doing. And then on the right-hand side is really just the final grading and seeding for the taxiway Echo North that was actually reopened earlier this year. Package 5, night work has re-begun, and again, as a reminder, this is the shoulder work on 624. Again, the one basin you can see on the bottom right was completed, and again, they're working through the shoulder work, which again, working, as I mentioned earlier, Bruce and Marilis coming in doing the lighting, and then Morrissey is the contractor coming back to do the base and then the paving between 11:30 and 5:30 in the morning.
Is that work closed through runway overnight?
Yep.
And that doesn't impact anyone? Cargo would be the only planes I think that would be coming in
Correct.
late.
And we coordinate with them, so they can use 1331. If we do have weather, then we'll postpone for the night so they can use the longer runway. But yeah, we have monthly calls continually with them as well. This project was completed in April, so I put it up here. It'll come off next month, but I know we talked about it with the approval as well as that discount, so that was completed. And the field strength test that they performed passed as well, which is great. Boarding bridges, really the biggest update here is we did receive the paperwork from the contractor from VRH Construction, so we're going to be setting up a meeting, again, discuss the submittal schedule, more to come on that in terms of timing for those two new bridges we talked about, Gate 3 and Gate 10. Hangar 7 restrooms, again, the biggest thing here, the township inspected them on May 12th earlier this month, passed inspection. We're really just working on some punch list items that we're working through here, but we're definitely glad to see this one through. Biggest thing, just a quick before and after. Some of you may remember, this was the before, and this is now the after. Again, definitely a great upgrade, but like I said, some punch list items we're working through overall. Again, happy to see this one through. Building demolition, the biggest update here is some of the seeding and grading that we mentioned they were going to come back in the spring, waiting on some other proposals. And then next month, we're kind of looking at it of kind of giving a rundown of which ones are left in the budget, I think that we had talked about before. So making some steady progress there as well. Moving on to Queen City. Design for 1533, that's been completed now again with that lighting bid that we just talked about. So once we get the final invoice here, begin that closeout, again, get our final reimbursement. And even as you know, the auditor mentioned, getting one more grant off the books just makes it easier to track. In terms of the paving down at Queen City, they started that last month. In terms of the closure, paving actually just started this past week. And then you can see on the left, they've been doing this full depth reclamation I may have talked about before. It's basically almost pulverizing the pavement, using it as the new base, adding some new material. So it actually decreases costs, improves efficiency, and it's a little bit more sustainable as well. And you guys see, again, where they're progressing now. Just yesterday, they were doing a lot of the runs basically from the intersection all the way to the 15 end. They're going to restart paving next week once the tests and all the other components come back on this mix, just to make sure everything is the way it should be before they continue. That's going well. Again, just an update, kind of where we are, you know, some of the ones that we're finishing, the grant receipts. We'll talk a little about some of those in the connector, but as Todd alluded to, again, just keeping the cash flow with part of those. And then in terms of what we talked about a bit last month, the carpet upgrades in Wiley and the old departure concourse have all been completed. The only components that are really remaining are where they're going to tie into the new space with the connector up on, right in front of gate 7, and then with the new vertical circulation. So coordinating, but definitely a huge upgrade from what it was before, which we'll continue to update. So one thing, just shifting gears a little bit, I know, some of the directors talk a little about some of the other components of the department. I feel like I was getting left out, so talk about something other than project related that, our team manages, but we haven't really talked about it in a while, so I think it was important with some of the projects, again, even the federal components, another element that we work with a lot of our contracts and really reporting, again, requirements with the FAA. So just a little bit talking about the disadvantaged business enterprises. Some of you may have heard of this before, but really what it is, small for-profit business that's owned by about 51% or more by a socially and economically disadvantaged individual. Again, you can see the classes there of what's, the FAA considers that and what it is. Really, where this plays in, I'll get into a little bit, a lot of information, but kind of summarize it. DBE firms have to be certified by the state through the Pennsylvania Unified Certification Program, which is how, as you go through, you'll see in terms of the FAA how we actually confirm compliance. So really, where does it come from? Again, federal and state requirement through the Department of Transportation, through 49 CFR Part 26. Really what it does is it helps kind of, basically create a level playing field from the larger contractors with others that can provide the same service, but are smaller in that class. Again, encourages participation in terms of the FAA working through, again, reduces discrimination, fair opportunity for everyone, again, regardless of social, economic status, again, size. Probably heard us talk a little bit about with other projects, grant assurances, again, components we need to comply with in order to receive our federal funding. And then I'm just going to go into most of ABE's components, but ABE and Queen City both have DBE plans that are separate in terms of goals, I'll get to in a minute. Our airport concessions also has its own separate one. So in terms of our food and beverage, the massage chairs downstairs, those components play into the goals. So again, kind of back to the federal side, why is this important? The FAA requires us to submit a federally approved DBE program, set triennial goals, so every 3 years, update the goal. And I'll get into how it's updated and how we kind of comply with it, but annually we need to submit reports in their system, make changes as we change our CIP because it's all related to our projects. And then the FAA is auditing a lot more in terms of the DBE components with contract provisions and clauses that are required to basically pass along to the contractors, making sure they're meeting the FAA's and our requirements. So in terms of establishing goals, again, the FAA has a standard, just like they do really for everything, in order to establish the goals that we can't do much to change. Really the biggest thing we can change is how we have firms participate. Kind of see here, determine the market area, what the anticipated projects are. The big things is contractors and consultants that go into the mix. It's not just from the construction side, it's the inspection, design, survey. Determining the total number of DBE firms, dividing by how many there are in the market area gives you that goal. And then also comparing past history and how it plays into everything. So this might seem kind of odd. You see Allegheny kind of in our market area in terms of, again, that's over near Pittsburgh. But the way this is developed is, again, folks or companies that submit bids or that we work with from the consulting side. But you can see 80% of the bidders that we get are from these counties. 84% of those, excuse me, those contract dollars are coming from that market area, which is kind of an interesting component. As part of the DBE program, we also work on outreach sessions. We did one actually back a little while ago now, but in 2019 with Lanta, just kind of letting folks know what our process is, going to pen bid, and then every 3 years when we get our triennial goals, we do a consultation where we invite contractors, consultants, just to kind of hear where we are and what the process is. Also, again, you mentioned we coordinate with PennBid. The biggest thing there is they help automate sending the information to the DB firms. So again, you kind of see as an example, the project we just talked about for the electrical component, they sent it to 65 DB firms. Fashioning Border Bridge sent it to 145. So again, just to help get the word out there of our projects. So kind of in summary, what does that really mean? Well, when you kind of go through all that, and we use one of our consultants to help us manage it, the goal for ABE is about 9.2% of the total project cost. 9.2% of that goes to DB firms. Queen City, it equates to about 3.9%. So you can see over the years where our goals, gone up and down a little bit, but on the higher end now. When you report to the FAA, you report awards during that year and then actual spent. So you can kind of see some of the difference there. And then the total number of firms that we've had, say we under contract, but through our prime contractor, mostly subs and sub-consultants. The big thing you kind of see in 2020 was, I think during that year we had 5 runway packages open from the design and the construction side. So again, that's where you get a big spike. And then some of the higher percentages, again, the 56%, 61%. Again, I mentioned the consultants. A lot of that is through ADCI, Airport Design Consultants, that we have. They're a DBE firm, and they do a lot of our design and inspection, as you know, from some of our projects.
How does the goal get set? Who sets the 9.2%, or what's the process there?
So the goal gets set with some of the steps I mentioned earlier with our consultant.
Okay.
That pulls it together. We review it, but then ultimately the FAA looks at it and says, yep,
Okay.
this matches their methodology. So I believe that's it. If no one has any questions.
Ryan, yeah, question. When you say you send out the bid, the information to X number of people, how is that done? Is that email? Is it?
So through PennBid, it's basically sent directly to them through email where they get basically a response back, or they can get a response back.
Okay.
So every solicitation we do, we then get that report that we then just keep for our records so we can show.
So it's done through PennBid?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Sure. So just a quick overview, but just wanted to update the committee. So any questions?
Thank you.
No other questions for Ryan? Thank you.
Good. All right, and now moving on to the connector, where we are. A lot of progress lately, and definitely the next month, some progress as well. Again, what's been done in May, you can kind of see there. Installation and testing of cameras, doing some of the site work with the tunnel. The switch gear has finally been energized, so that's been a big one. Doing a lot of the other testing out there. You can see some of the work that we're currently doing with the terrazzo, metal panel, windows, some of the, again, fit and finishes that we've talked about before in terms of where we are.
So on that slide there, like major work completed,
Yep.
exterior glass is completed? Or
So
almost?
The
The reason I'm asking is I'm looking out the window there.
Yep.
It doesn't look like the exterior windows are completed.
Yeah, so the bridge exterior glass was completed. Some components or some of the glass panels are waiting on some.
Right. So it's not 100%, it's almost.
Just
Big
the bridge.
section. That's
Let's
just
talk
the
about
bridge.
the elevated bridge portion.
Alright.
That we have all the glass in there.
No, I can see the glass is in, just the trim's not finished.
Yeah, the trim is not finished, and
Okay.
some of the glazing I know we're still waiting on.
All right.
Yep. No, that's a good point. Again, upcoming work, again, I'm talking about the finishes. TSA equipment installation, they're coming June 12th as a date. We've kind of coordinated with them now to bring in the 3 lanes of new equipment. Apron paving, they're working, and again, obviously the final commissioning, certificate of occupancy is the next big component we're working through. Again, some progress photos from the outside. See some of the glass again. You can see on the top, again, some of the glass is missing there, but actually here's the bridge up on the right-hand side. That has some of the trim there. But again, still some cleanup they got to do. Site work, In terms of that area, it's been cleaned up. They're working on getting that set up as well. Framing for the terrazzo in the bridge that they're currently working on this week. Some of the siding in the connector, some of the panels. Thing you might want to note, you kind of see in the middle that bright window. What they're actually doing here is they're testing that dynamic glass that changes tint. So you can see the one in the middle is not on, and all the other kind of light blue is tinted. Again, kind of what we've done before, again, as part of the lead component, but even for glare and other impacts to TSA, again, as the sun moves throughout the area, it adjusts the tint for energy efficiency and for the visual components. And you can see some of the column covers even going in, glass in front of the TSA office area. The forms and surfaces, which is what we call it, on the sides and front of the elevator have been going in. Again, you probably saw the temporary partition was down out here. So some of the work now is really coordinated through us with IT and the video wall, and actually some of the queue lane stanchions are going in today, tomorrow, and into next week. Get prepared. TSA offices, some of the break room, training rooms. TSA supervisor podium, which is actually elevated so they can see the whole space. And again, you kind of see the elevator in the back there that they've been working on those forms and surfaces. In terms of phase one, all these components, again, working through or complete. The biggest thing, again, that they're just finishing is the waterproofing the tunnel. Again, you kind of see where we are with some of the different components here as we kind of get to the tail end of these phases. Again, we've kind of talked through some of these. Again, the biggest thing is opening the checkpoint, vertical circulation for core, to then move on to the tunnel. Again, no major changes here. The biggest thing, kind of coordinating, again, as we mentioned, with the cash flow. Last month, our grant receipts was about 30% or so, now to about 43. Again, and also working with the FA on that one $5 million grant that we have to get about $3 million, hopefully in the next month or two. So definitely continuing to move that. So biggest thing, again, with the schedule, a lot happening in June. The next few weeks, I think we're going to be coordinating a lot internally about when that beneficial occupancy date is for the connector, vertical circulation, and then ultimately when we can switch over to the tunnel. And again, a big part of that is coordinating with TSA for when they can make their switch from downstairs to upstairs.
Do you have a target date?
So right now, kind of looking at that early July timeframe, but the biggest thing is making sure that with the folks that we want here for that event, we can line everything up. Biggest thing, even to your point, Paul, some of the windows, some of the material with those, again, is happening in June, so a lot of that is just making sure we get those materials here, which as of right now, we're forecasting that we should.
Any other questions for Ryan?
What are the potential, do you have any potential roadblocks that would prevent early July?
I mean, at this point, other than, again, maybe some of the metal panels, if they got delayed, but it shouldn't, in terms of the interior space, there's nothing stopping the progress they're making now.
Okay.
Again, TSA, coordinating with them that June 12th date. Once the new equipment's in, once the space is ready, again, inspected, it's coordinating with them on a date to kind of go live or switch over, because they have some equipment they have to bring from downstairs upstairs.
Seeing none. Thank you.
Great. All right, thank you.
Any new business? I'm going to entertain a motion to adjourn. Adjourn.
Okay, 5-minute break, then we'll roll into exec.
Okay, yes, thank you.
Thank you for not making me go to my safe deposit box to get out my passport.
I
was thinking another one, but right.
Yeah,
It's Keller, yes, that's who we have.
okay.
Have they given it all
Okay.
Next time.
Let's see, Todd. Todd's not here. Glenn.
Yeah, let's give Glenn a second.
We're back rolling. Okay, so we're live on the stream.
Okay.
Just gonna stare.
Oh.
I'll send you a plan.
I'm telling you, Alex is.
We're still waiting for Glenn Reed to come back.
We're going to hold off starting the exec meeting until Glenn gets back. So it should be back momentarily.
I talked to him.
One down, two down. He's like, why is everyone?
Wait, Glenn.
Glenn, at least I beat Glenn. Yeah, he was,
Those guys want that.
we're checking the look at that new, that's just the next, so that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
Just so you're in.
Okay, we will go ahead and call the May 25th, 2023 meeting of the Lehigh Northampton Airport Authority Executive Committee to order. First item on the agenda, Sylvette, could you call the roll, please?
John Hayes.
Here.
Glenn Reedman.
Present.
Justin Grimshaw.
Here.
Mike Sturshik.
Here.
Paul Anthony.
Here.
Full house.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any public comment today?
No, sir.
Thank you again. Next on the agenda are the action items. First item on the action item list is approval of the meeting minutes of April 20, 2023. They were put out on Novus agenda. We have a motion by Mike, second. Second by Glenn. Any additions, corrections, or deletions? Hearing none, all those in favor of the subject motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next is approval of the Florio Perucci invoices for April of 2023. They were also out on Novus. I'd entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Motion by Glenn, second by Justin. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the subject motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, next is approval of the hotel development term sheet. I think I turn it over to Darren at this point.
Thanks, John. Good morning, everyone.
Grab that seat.
So I'm just going to run through, everybody should have gotten this PowerPoint when we sent it out last week, so you guys hopefully had a chance to take a look through it. I'll walk through it quickly. Before I start, I just wanted to do so. We have some of our partners over here. So Tony Peterman, I think you guys have all met several times. And then we've Matt Levin, who's with Stiefel, and Sean Boyle, and I totally lost her name right now, with Boyle Construction as well. So as we go through, if there's questions on some of this stuff, these guys can certainly help fill in any blanks as well. So, and we were expecting Ramiro with Preston Hollow Capital, but unfortunately he tried to travel by air and flight got canceled. He did not make it. So there's what happens, you know. So, but again, these guys are very familiar with the structure, so they can help if there's any questions we need to answer. So, So just quickly on the timeline, we've been talking hotels. We've been working with Tony since back in 2018 when he came to us with JLL to assist in looking for a developer. We actually had a pretty good deal, just about 95% in place, and then a little thing called COVID came along and totally killed that deal. Tried to restart that a little bit into 2021 and realized that just the partner at that point in time, which was High Hotels, was just not able to commit any longer because of the sort of damage done to the industry by COVID at that point. So regrouped a little. Tony put this whole project together for us. It's something they've used other places, the structure we have. That's where we've come to today. Also important, we do have, we talked to RACB earlier, but we have been awarded $1 million RACB grant for this project as well that will be going into this project that we should probably see about 2030, I guess, if we're telling us at this point in time, right?
Trying to do the math there.
Right, so the RACB's been approved.
It has been approved,
It'll
yes.
pass through this authority?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's $1 million
Yeah,
for the project on this one as well. So we also have, I believe, another about $1 million multimodal grant to work on some of the road improvements and things that will go into facilitating this project. So
I did see it on the term lease that, some of
Yeah.
those improvements, so we do have a grant.
we have a grant to cover those as well.
All right.
So you guys have seen this several different times, I think now. Early on, there were a lot of blanks. We've now filled in all the blanks. HP&D, that is Tony's company. He's going to be our hotel developer. You can see he's hiring Colliers, Boyle Construction, and Crestline to do the design, the construction, and the day-to-day management of the hotel. Provident Resources Group has been here from the beginning. They continue. They will be the owner of the hotel. That's the nonprofit and we'll go into a little bit more detail on these in other slides. Lehigh County Industrial Development Authority is actually going to be issuing the bonds, so they'll be the sort of the bond conduit for this. Stiefel, as we have over here, they're the financial advisor on this, and Preston Hollow Capital will be actually issuing the capital. Important things on this, the two committees up top there, the Management Committee and Advisory Committee. That's basically for the operation of the hotel, and we will have seats on both of those committees. So we will have some input into how this hotel's operated on a day-to-day basis. So again, HP&D, Tony's company, he's been in this business for a long time. So they're basically leading the whole development. They've formed the development team. They'll take this project till basically till we get our CO. And they're actually be the ones, once we sign the term sheet today, Tony will start spending some money on development and on design and permitting and everything, so that they'll be the ones funding those costs for this. And the hotel operator's Crestline, national hotel operator. See some of their properties up there. They have one up in State College, PA, and then we pulled a few others from their website, some of the larger ones they have. Again, good management company will be managing the day-to-day operations. Provident, so this is, I think what's sort of different on this structure than what a lot of hotel structures. So they are a national not-for-profit organization that works for government agencies to lessen the burden of government and foster economic development. So they basically help us to do these development, increase our non-aero revenues like we've been trying to. See, they're not small. They've got almost $4 billion worth of assets under management, and they frequently work with Preston Hollow Capital, who is our capital provider on this as well. You can see the role. They'll basically establish a special purpose entity that will they'll sign the ground lease with us at the end of the day. So our ground lease will be with Provident. So I'm going to just sort of stop there and ask if there are any questions on this piece, because I know this is sort of the piece that is a little different. Folks may have had some questions about how this works.
Yeah, it's been a while since we talked about this.
Yeah.
The SPE, will that be a subsidiary of Provident, or is that a separate legal entity? And if so, who actually would own it?
It's a wholly owned subsidiary.
Of Provident, okay. And it'll be a for-profit sub of a nonprofit corp?
It will not be a for-profit corp.
Oh, it won't be.
A nonprofit. That's one of the requirements of the model. The owner must be a 501c3, which the SPE will be.
Without taking an hour and a half. That works. And looking at the size of the organization, yeah, I guess it works. I just have never encountered that. Prior to this, I've never encountered that structure before.
Can I just
So it's
jump in real quick?
Absolutely.
So Darren mentioned the lessening the burdens of government and fostering economic development. That's their mission. And so that is an IRS accepted mission for a not-for-profit. And to the extent that they are furthering your mission, that is satisfactory for tax, for being a 501c3.
Any other questions on this piece? Great. The underwriter is Stiefel, that's Matt over here. Again, investment banking, wealth management firm. They're going to be working with Lehigh County Industrial Development Authority to be the underwriter for the bond issuance. And then Preston Hollow, like I said, they're the ones that will be providing the actual capital at the end. They'll be 100% of the financing will be through them. So we originally had talked about this being a public offering. Obviously, markets have changed a bit since we started talking about this, so that wasn't going to work. So it'll be all private equity in this instead. And then Marriott, we threw this in there basically. Everybody knows who Marriott is, but I think it's just important. Marriott's excited about this project. Tony said they're calling him, wanting to know when they can get this brand on our site. They want to see the Courtyard brand at the airport site here. I'm sure they've had opportunities to put it other places in the market, and this is where they want it. So it's a great brand. I think it'll look a lot like that. So I think that's going to make a nice appearance on our front doorstep out there when it's all said and done. And just, this is the ground lease of about 3 acres. That'll all get figured out for sure as we go through the planning and permitting and everything. 40 years with up to a 9-year extension. Basically, it ends when the bonds are retired, and we're expecting those to be retired by year 40 or in that right around year 40. Some of that will be predicated on the performance of the hotel, but if everything goes according to projections, it should be about year 40. Once those have been terminated, the lease or have been retired, the lease terminates, the hotel reverts to the authority at that point in time, so at that point, we will own it.
Just very briefly, Darren, just the entrance road to the airport then gets realigned over to come in front of the hotel, and then over in the existing entrance road would be closed.
That's the ultimate plan.
Yep.
We can open the hotel without that being done, so, ultimately, we will open the hotel using our current entrance if this part is not done. But
Okay.
ultimately, yeah, we'd like to see that move down there. Kind of creates that nice internal circulation. Actually also gives us the ability to do some other development down here that we can't do today until we have that entrance done, some other commercial development, so.
Right, so Darren, what's in place right now from the path from the hotel to the airport? I mean, if we don't have the main entrance.
Oh, so what basically, I mean, you're gonna use this, it'll go this way basically, on that current roadway, which is right here.
Right.
You
So,
come in, you make that first right
So
out
any
of the main
improvements needed though to get to the hotel or?
we
it's
will,
not in
so
place?
this is what we're talking about, that $1 million multimodal grant we'll do.
Just for that
It'll
section?
basically clean this up, it'll get rid of this parking booth that's here now, that's the old economy lot booth. Clean up the roadway, I think some striping, some lighting, pavement, so
Stormwater.
just stormwater
So
improvements.
that's what we're looking at for the $1 million multimodal.
The multimodal grant, yeah, that'll cover that. The RACP grant will actually go into the hotel project itself, the multimodal will do the road work to get there.
Got it, okay.
And I would assume shuttle bus from the hotel to the airport.
I mean, it's not gonna be that far, we're also talking about improving walkways, so we have
Okay,
the
that's
covered
what I was gonna
walkways to the multimodal, so we've talked about tying into that system somehow too, just to make it an easy travel in, so.
Yeah, to that point, it looks really short.
Yeah.
But actually, what is it?
I don't know, we'd have to actually, I mean,
Yeah, I mean, back.
I'm gonna say it's,
Probably
half a mile probably from door to door, if you look at it.
I'd take the under on that.
You're gonna drop me off.
You didn't get close
Yeah,
enough?
absolutely, it's not a half a mile.
Well, the hotel,
Pretty close, we'll figure it out.
Okay, we on?
Sure.
Okay.
All right.
I mean, real quick, I guess in context, when we actually looked at that for some of the employee parking, I think it's about as far, if not shorter, than the far end of our long-term lot.
Yeah, that's true.
Kind of perspective when passengers walking in.
So like, we used to, employee parking used to be kind of out in this area and everything, and when we moved it up here, they're about equal distance to the terminal, so.
So from the
So even
long-term
though
lot,
you're
is there,
parking out there, you're walking that far.
In the outer edge.
And all
is
of
there a
this
shuttle that brings
is,
people
all
into
the
the
covered
long-term lot?
walkway and multimodal that people use to get into the terminal area.
Yeah, like, so what the idea would be, if we can tie into this walkway somehow, create a better pedestrian access from out there.
And then also the 4.25 acres, that includes the parking for the,
It'll actually be about 3 acres total. We had to originally identify 4.25 that can go, and it'll be about 3 acres, which will include the parking as well.
Include the parking,
So
okay.
everything will be contained in that 3-acre parcel.
How many rooms for the hotel again?
125, we're thinking, right around there.
meeting space? Much?
Meeting space.
Couple of rooms.
Yeah.
Dan, are we improving the whole term sheet or just the part about our cost, if we terminate without cause?
I mean, we're approving the term sheet. The only thing that term sheet obligates us to technically is that $200,000 cost. But the reason we're approving the whole term sheet is because these are the terms we're gonna use to draw up the ground lease.
Right.
That's why. we approved
Yeah, I
it.
understand
So
that.
We wanted them to be as clear right now, so that sort of our next move between Tony and myself and the rest of the staff here is to sit down and not only do a ground lease and a development agreement so that we have everything covered. So when they get all their permitting and they're ready to close, it's just a matter of that everything's done at that point in time and we're ready to sign and get shovels in the ground.
All right, let's just say, worst case, something happens, the developer has to back out.
Mhm.
We're obligated for 200,000. What's
No,
their
no, no.
obligation to the authority?
Nothing. If they walk, there's nothing. So we're obligated to pay. They're the ones putting the money in. We're just basically, we're not even obligated for the whole 200. We're obligated up to 200.
Yeah, I saw the receipts, but we still have something in this that we need to be reimbursed for.
We won't really be putting money out at this stage.
We didn't have our legal counsel review the term sheet.
Well, I guess we have some legal fees, yeah, but they're not getting, their legal fees are not reimbursable.
I'm
either.
saying if they back out, we should be
But
reimbursed
if we back
something.
out, their legal fees aren't reimbursable either. It's their permitting and development fees. Legal fees are not part of that. I can tell you typically none of the deals we've done, we've ever had legal fee reimbursements in our deals.
Okay, but, so there's no other costs? I mean,
Not in the permitting stage, I would say,
No.
once we get to the point of start doing there's some staff time and stuff,
yeah,
I'm sure.
right, staff time or something, right?
Yeah, you guys don't pay me that much, so it's not a lot of money. So, but no, there is. I mean, there certainly are some costs to it, but,
But on the term, I'm looking at the the $3, I guess, for the privilege fee.
Mhm.
And like, if I'm reading it, like every 5 years, it'll increase 75 cents or, 10-year anniversary. Why don't we just make that a percentage? Then we don't have to worry about renegotiating as we go on.
It won't be renegotiated. It'll basically be, it'll start as $3. It'll go up 75 cents in 5 years, and then it'll just be adjusted back to CPI at the end. There's no
But it'll be
negotiation there.
benchmarked.
So we benchmark. And that's honestly, FAA requires us to benchmark. Basically, the rent is the same thing. If you read through it, I'm sure you saw the rent is the same way. At 10-year intervals, we have to go back and benchmark to fair market value. That's all FAA requirements. They won't even let us just do CPI increases anymore.
Okay.
They don't trust those.
So why don't we just go percentage instead of a flat fee?
I don't know that we didn't really talk about that. And this, though, I think the other thing about that, two things on the hotel privilege fee. That's not necessarily only for this hotel project. Not that we're looking to build a second hotel anytime soon, so Tony, don't fall off your chair over there. We're not gonna be building another one to compete. This is going to be a fee that we're gonna come back to the board and ask you to approve that for any hotel developed on airport property, they would pay this hotel privilege fee. It's similar to what we do with our rental cars today. We charge them $2 per day per rental, I believe, as a customer facility charge that we charge there. It's similar to that. It's similar to our PFCs that we charge passengers flying through the airport at $4.50 for every passenger that goes through. They're dollar fees. They're not necessarily percentage fees.
Is there a reason for that? I mean, I'm just kind of.
I mean, the PFC is set. That's a federal.
Right.
The CFC, that was negotiated with the rental cars, and that's how we got to, as opposed to. I don't know
Pretty
if
standard
there's.
for airports to do a dollar fee that way. I don't know why, but that's.
Doesn't mean that.
I mean, it's honestly, it's probably easier from us from an audit standpoint and everything else, it's a little bit easier to track than worrying about percentage of room rates and everything every day, I think it's just easier for us to manage, to be honest. So, not that it couldn't be done, I think this is what we chose.
I'm comfortable with percentages and not the flat fee.
I'd like to double on that, actually. It definitely is gonna go up 75 cents in 5 years?
That's how we'll set it, and this will all come to you guys next month, we'll talk about this.
Well, I know, but like, we're kind of agreeing to the terms and the
You are.
contract, so if we can.
No, I'm not saying that we shouldn't talk about it, I'm just saying that when we talk, but that's the plan, is it'll be $3 to start, it'll go up 75 cents in 5 years.
Because it says at least 75 cents, so that
Well,
tells me
right,
there's room for
it is.
negotiations.
It does, if CPI is outpacing, we could go higher than 75 cents technically, but that's where we go to the CPI, like to basically set it back and benchmark it back.
What's the mechanism? Mechanism for 75 cents or greater than 75%?
CPI. CPI.
Okay, this is driven by CPI. So where would CPI have to be for the number to be greater than 75 cents?
$5 pretty high, right? I mean, if I had to think about it now, I'm just going back. So it's likely it's gonna go up to 75. We tried to keep this a number that, again, working on a number that we're projecting out over 40 years for these guys as well as they're doing theirs. So the $3,
Yeah, that's
what I'm saying, like it would have to be
So it's a 25% bump in 5 years.
Yeah.
75 cents is 25% of.
Yeah.
That's pretty high.
That has been running that high, that's the thing.
I mean, it has been, actually, it'll pace right with it if it stays the way it is, but. Any other questions on that fee at this point? I think the only other, like I said, the most important piece of all of this is the 200,000 on the term sheet. Like I said, we do want buy-in on all the terms of the agreement. Everything is non-binding, could be changed in negotiations. We prefer not to, obviously. We want to go into this with eyes wide open, understand the terms. The 200,000 is really the only thing that you guys are binding us to at this point in time by approving this. Good.
I have a question. I don't know if it deals with the term sheet. This is a very unique question. This project is going to be built here at the airport, and it's going to be built by the Lehigh Northampton Airport Authority, correct?
Well, technically built by our developer. It's a land lease to them.'s not building this hotel. We're leasing the property.
We're sort of the owner of it, or?
Eventually, we'll be the owner someday.
Okay. The airport or the new hotel will be collecting a hotel tax.
Yep.
The hotel's located in Lehigh County.
Correct.
My question is there any possibility that both Lehigh County and Northampton County could share the hotel tax that is collected? instead of all of it just going to Lehigh County?
I mean, I think that's something,
I think that's a Lehigh County question,
right,
as opposed to
Legal
here.
question or-
Yeah.
yeah. I don't think
This
we
is a
have any,
very
obviously, any
unique
control over
situation
it.
because we are a joint county authority, and this is probably new ground.
Sure.
Yeah, my recommendation on that would be, I think there's a legal question if Lehigh County could, but I think the practical question, will Lehigh County consider it? It should come before we spend anything on the legal. So, Mike, you're a Lehigh County rep. You could go back to Phil Armstrong and ask what his thoughts are on this matter. And let's test the water in Lehigh County and see, because from a functional standpoint, the tax goes to them. We can't direct anything at our
I just didn't
level.
know because we're an authority, if,
Yeah.
it's
Yep.
I have no idea what the answer is.
Mhm.
If both counties can share the tax,
Yep.
even though the hotel is located in Lehigh County, but it's done by the authority.
So let's go back to Phil and see what he says.
Just, Glenn, just one of the things that, the counties share 1.25% of the 4 points. So the other percentages wouldn't change. The amount that goes to Discover Lehigh Valley and then
No,
Discover
not that.
passes on
No,
through
I'm
to
saying,
LVEDC would stay the same. So
Right.
you're only talking about 1.25 points of the 4-point hotel tax is what you're talking about sharing. Correct.
the point that the counties
Right,
keep,
yeah.
not the point that goes out.
I just want to be clear
Right,
on that.
but if they collect the tax, I don't know, say the tax is $100,000, 50,000 would go to Lehigh, 50 would go to
Right,
Northampton.
yeah.
And then Northampton and Lehigh would do their distributions, to LVEDC and,
Discover.
Discovery.
That can't, the taxes, the counties are responsible for collecting the taxes. So it would have to be collected by Lehigh County
Okay.
by law. I mean, that's
I
just,
understand, I'm throwing it out here on the table for discussion.
Yeah, you probably understand the
you
hotel
know
tax better
better
than
than
anybody in
anybody.
this room, I'm
That's
sure.
true.
Yeah, he was knocking our door with money.
He's up, so bad.
Actually, before we go there, we can stay on that slide for 1 second. This is for the guys over there. Construction begin early 2024. That's quick. Can that happen? Or is what?
depends on the approvals.
Yeah, that to me, it just seems to me to be a very aggressive timeline. Can we meet that? Or can you meet that is a better question.
Yeah, I mean, from that standpoint, we could meet that. We are just going through the process. Once we have the policy executed, we have probably 6 to 8 months for approvals, and then we're looking to start. And given the current nature of what the site is currently like, we're looking to get started right away. So that is, it may not be January 1st.
No.
But I do see that first quarter is definitely doable.
Okay, that's what I would consider early. I'd say first quarter.
It's doable, yeah.
Okay.
Any anticipated problems with the local approval? I think we're Hanover Township, Lehigh County here, right?
I can tell you, Hanover actually wants this project. I think we've had conversations, so going back, I'm gonna say 7 or 8 years ago, we have an agreement in place still with Hanover from the FedEx project that we did. And basically, to keep it simple, for them allowing us to take the traffic through and then not, approving all the traffic improvements through Hanover, we agreed as an authority to look at this parcel and a couple of other parcels to develop commercially so they get some ratables off them. That's why they want this, because they'll get tax ratables off this that they don't get today. So I mean, I'm still gonna go through the process, but I do think the township is going to be, and we've had conversations since then with them about it. They're supportive of a hotel here, so
That's
I don't
positive.
expect them to
Right.
give us any undue issues with it.
Our in-house civil engineer has preliminarily looked at it, and it's pretty conforming. It should be pretty easy walk, nothing too controversial, so.
Okay, good.
Also, I like the flag. Courtyard's a good flag. It's not a Motel 6.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that helps a lot.
Well, and that was obviously one of our requirements from the beginning, was we weren't gonna put anything, lower quality here. So you also, I've had the term sheet has been in Novus. I know obviously you guys have taken a look at it, which I appreciate. Any other questions I can answer on the term sheet? I think pretty much everything that's in here we've just walked through. Just probably a little more detail in Novus than what was in on the slides.
Okay, so walk through again, Darren, because you talked about something coming back next month. Do you mean next month or next week?
No, I'm
Yeah,
talking.
walk us through
I'm sorry,
timing.
I'm talking in June. We'll probably, and that's not time sensitive. It has to be June. It could actually be it could be our August meeting too, just to approve the, that hotel privilege fee. We want to have that memorialized in a resolution from the board saying that
Yep.
we charge that to all users on the,
Okay.
on the airport. So that'll, like I said, it could be next month. It doesn't necessarily have to be, it could be August too. I just want to have it far ahead of their closing so that when we close, it's already in place.
Okay. Okay, so what we're looking for at this point is recommendation to the board of directors for approval of the term sheet as per Novus and as per your presentation.
Yes, sir.
So I'd entertain a motion to that effect.
I'll move.
Motion by Glenn, do I have a second? Second. Open it up for discussion. We had some. Justin?
Yeah, I thought, I'm confused, because are we approving the whole term sheet, or are we just approving our $200,000 portion?
The term sheet.
The whole term sheet?
Yes.
Okay, then we need to rewind about 10 minutes in this conversation when you told us that we were only looking at the 200,000 today.
Well, I said the only thing binding, and it's a non-binding term sheet. The only thing binding is the $200,000.
Okay.
Which is actually stated in there that tells you that.
But it's better to agree to the terms now.
Better to agree to them now. We've, honestly, lessons learned from us, some in the Majestic negotiations, getting these terms agreed to up front.
I agree.
Will make the lease,
That makes
will make the negotiations a whole lot easier.
shortens the negotiating period.
Yeah. I mean,
No, I understand that. I was just confused by the way
I
it was
get it.
presented.
My guess.
I apologize if it was confusing.
I'm comfortable with it.
Okay.
I'm good.
Okay. Other questions, other comments?
Well, I'd prefer a percentage instead of a flat rate, room rate. That's my preference. Okay.
Is there language in here that covers that, Darren, so we can see exactly how that works? It was a little confusing.
In the term sheet,
Yeah.
it is. Yeah, can you scroll down? I think it's section 4.
For what? The
Section
hotel
7.
privilege? 7.1.
Yeah. So, I can read it, or let you guys actually just read it, but it is basically just, I know as you travel around to hotels and you see it a lot of other places, cities do it, convention centers do it, you go to Vegas and there's about 10 different ones of these fees for everybody, That's basically what this is going to be. It's an additional fee because the hotel's on airport property. We're charging a little more than if you were staying at the Hilton Garden Inn off of Airport Road,
So that's gonna be a separate itemized charge on.
It'll show, I believe, as hotel privilege fee right on the bill.
And from the hotel's perspective, we're trying to balance out giving the authority additional revenue source with it. Other hotels will sell against us. It's a competitive disadvantage. We're the only hotel in the area who's charging this fee, right? So $3, $3.75 in 5 years, we can live with that. If the structure is percentage, and when we run a model on what that becomes in year 10 or 15, does that start to become a number that maybe as a hotel we're not real comfortable with, right? Because $3, I don't think the average traveler is going to notice. It starts to get to be $6, $8. There is a number that starts to get uncomfortable, right? So that's why the percentage, it's open-ended, right?
No, it is. I understand that.
We would rather put the money in when we sit together every 10 years to look at fair market value, give you the rent money, right? Because the hotel is doing better than what we projected, and the hotel can afford to pay higher rent. Let's give it that way, as opposed to legislatively being on the hook for a percentage number that none of our competitors have to charge.
Right, to me, it's a convenience fee.
And
It's a convenience fee to be right here on site.
Right, and that's why we feel like we can justify it.
Yeah.
But you can only still
It's a
justify
privilege
it.
to stay here on site.
Yeah.
So it is.
There you go. And maybe we call it a hotel convenience fee. It doesn't necessarily have to be privilege fee.
No,
I feel like that name is better.
I get that.
That's fine
I'm
too.
You're gonna be serving coffee.
I'm not gonna walk a half mile, Mike.
Drinking coffee.
Our hotel rate also has built into it, because it's higher than others, A, our quality is better, but B, there's a privilege, there's a convenience for being right here.
Yeah,
right?
no, I understand.
So it's all coming from the same place, right? It's not like our hotel ADR, average daily rate, doesn't have that already baked in to some extent.
Right,
To
so
a
if
large
you,
extent.
hang on, so if you bake that into the room rate, it would benefit the authority to have a percentage of that and not a flat $3 fee.
the rates that we're underwriting it to it already has that baked in. We assume that people are going to pay a premium because of the location, right? So it's already there. At some point, $3, $3.75, $4.25 in year 10 or whatever, or $4.50, we can live with that. But if room rates grow quite a bit in 10, 15 years, which we hope they do, let's come up with a structure that allows us to share that windfall with you via rent, and not a higher percentage number that's going to inhibit our ability to raise rents along with the market.
Well, and Tony, I think that's important because.
On the bill, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Because
portfolio.
Room tax, hotel tax,
Fee.
right.
So we have a 10-year look until we have to renegotiate the lease. Is that what we're saying?
10 years, and I think it's important because this is probably the one section we spent the most time figuring out what works for us, mostly from an FAA standpoint to keep them happy, and what could work for these guys for their model going out to be able to model it this far. So I'm not sure if you read through that, the way we determine value. One of the factors in there is average daily rate. So again, if the hotel is performing, we're going to be able to pump that rent up a little bit higher. So we are going to get more money in rent if the hotel is doing better. If it's not performing, we still have a floor. You know, they're still not going to go below a floor. It's going to be fair market value as determined by appraisal. So there's a whole, like I said, we spent a lot of time coming up with a mechanism that everybody could live with on how we'll determine fair market value.
Do you like percentage as a method of getting more money, or just because
Yeah,
it's
just
a
more
process?
comfortable, like, if the
Right.
room rates increase, right, the authority should
Well,
benefit from the room increase, I guess, if you want to say it that way, the room rate.
Everybody should benefit from it, the hotel
Yeah.
and the authority.
We just have a different way of doing that.
Yeah.
We do have rent increases every year as well. You know, the rent will
Well,
go up, you know, so as room rates increase, typically, your CPI increases are probably gonna pace with your average daily rate increases. If
But-
you don't, we're gonna make that up at the 10-year periods.
We also don't, I understand not being a deterrent for people
Right.
to stay there. I
Right.
kind of, so the balance is $3 a fair value? I don't know. Mike, you kind of like on that part, you know, for hotels in area? I don't know if $3 is fair.
I think fair, $3 is a fair amount. If you're looking at ADRs in the region, I don't know what they are now because I've been out of it for 4 years, but let's say ADRs are around 125, 150. You know, that's under 3%. I think, you know, once you start hitting that 3%, 4% rate, you're starting to get into real dollars.
But what did we just see, ADR just
The
bumped
hotel
over
tax,
100?
the local hotel tax is 4%. You don't want to approach that.
No,
You don't want to be approaching that.
Yeah, ADR is going up slightly.
Just
It has
over
started
100
to. Yeah, it's been going up a little bit, you know, coming out of COVID. It's actually has improved.
For the footprint.
We're also putting more rooms in the market now too, so we'll see how that ADR, if it
Yeah,
continues
how it
to be able
plays
to
out,
do that.
yeah.
There's been a lot of new
A lot of
hotels
growth in the market.
open.
ADR is
recently.
just a hair lower than that, it's about 113-ish right now.
Like, you know, for me, like, I don't deal in this, so I don't know what a fair value is.
I think the $3 benefits us because it gives us a floor
More bucks.
in case things don't go so well, you know.
Well, it's based on occupancy, so if things don't go well and the hotel's not occupied,
Well, then we have more problems, obviously, you know, for everybody. I mean, we're still gonna get our ground rent, we're still
We
gonna
have
get
other issues.
Yeah, we still get-
$3.
okay, I get that.
But, you know,
Yeah, I think the other issue is the ground rent. I mean, that's something that most other hotels don't have, and that doesn't change. And I think that's a benefit to us.
yeah, that is truly why when we first went back in 2018 and put this out to RFP, that's why we only had 2 real responses, because not many people want to build on a ground lease. They want to own it. They want to own the property, and we are not selling this property. Even if we wanted to, FAA wouldn't allow us to sell it, but we wouldn't want to sell this anyhow.
And I'm comfortable with the $3. We have the 2 step-ups, which, or the 75-cent step-ups, which work out to about 4.2, 4.3% per year. That's our floor. We have the CPI recapture at the 10-year period. If CPI runs hot, we have the recapture at that period where we can take advantage of additional income due to that fact. So I hear where you're coming from, Paul. From my own personal perspective, I'm comfortable with it the way we've got it structured, because I think it's a balance between what I think is a fair fee up front from what I understand in the industry, and we have a mechanism for recapture if the economy runs hotter than we expect.
and then there's a floor, obviously. that
And
we're
the floor is
saying.
the 75-cent step-ups.
Yeah, and thinking of 4% CPI, I mean, right now, that's a little lower than normal, but for how many years prior to COVID, CPI was
Not bad.
1% or less, you know, 0 for several
Well,
years.
an equivalency is if you go to a city that has a hotel district around a stadium, they generally pay a sports fee, and those sports fees are flat, generally flat. They're not percentages, they're generally flat rate.
Good discussion on that point. Other comments, other questions?
I'm fine, John.
Okay, I'd entertain, we have a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor of the subject motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Guys, build a hotel.
Thanks, everyone.
Get it done. This thing's been on the docket longer than I've been here.
Been on the docket
Almost as long as I've been here.
Been on the docket for a long time.
Yeah. We're cleaning up some plans. We saw the plans from 1992 that show it out front.
Oh, you're kidding.
Yeah, there was one out going.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.
Good question.
Very good.
Oh, yes, in the parking lot there was one, and instead of four when they built the terminal, they spread that end of the terminal, where the glass terrace was, and the old coffee shop, put a 5-story hotel on that.
Okay, we have no more action items. We have the discussion item. I believe, Colin, you're going to give us an update regarding public and government relations.
Yes. Good morning, everybody. I know some of this information might be repetitive because Darren's up there talking about some of the progress we've made, certainly on the governmental side, but always appreciate the opportunity to come up here and talk about government relations, where we are, as well as community engagement. So the last time I was here, we had gone before Northampton County. We spoke before the Lehigh County General Services Committee, which was extremely positive. I want to thank Board Chairman John Hayes. He was in attendance that night. A lot of follow-up questions about potential air service opportunities, where are we going next? They were excited about the Denver announcement. There was a buzz about the American and United Landline Service. Commissioners have been using it. They think it's been a fantastic way to connect to some of the places they want to go. So the numbers reflect how popular it is, but it was great to be before the commissioners in Lehigh County to hear that they're using it and they think it's a real benefit to the airport. So airport staffing was also something we typically get. Where are we from a staffing perspective as we head into the summer months, into the busy time, to make sure that we have the proper staffing, which we're doing very, very well. We sponsored the Northampton County State of the County address yesterday. Great to see Paul Anthony there, and Ben Riedman, and Frank was there. I know, Frank, you were there too. So it was a good event, and we were a sponsor of that event. Next scheduled county presentations are in 2024. Went a little off schedule. Typically we do it towards the end of the year, but with COVID and the way everything kind of shook out, we did it earlier on in the year, and then we'll head back again, and we do it every single year. So a great opportunity to talk to the counties, and I don't know if you want to add anything about, what the presentation was.
No, it was a good conversation. I was happy. I think there were 2 commissioners that had used the bus service down to Philadelphia, Ron Beitler and one other.
Yes.
I can't remember who the other was. But it is amazing to me, the number, Frank, you talked about your neighbor. I know a few people. The number of people that are getting on that bus to go down to Philly is incredible.
And for the potential of it ever going past the TSA checkpoint, you can hear, I had a couple of state representatives call to let us know if it gets through because we'd like to use it for different destinations. So.
And I know he's listening. The gentleman who made public comment last month in regard to it being a bus instead of a plane.
Yes.
I agree with you. I'd rather it be a plane. It's not going to be a plane. So we've got the bus, and that's where we are, and it's good to have that connection.
So I want to take us through the calendar of legislative meetings we've had since the last time we spoke. March 1st, we were for our Northeast delegation in Harrisburg. It was a legislative luncheon that we put on to discuss our future infrastructure investment. Basically, the diagram I had showed about all the different infrastructure plans that we had with dollar amounts and certain phasing of those projects, were discussed with the Northeast delegation. And that's obviously our Lehigh and Northampton County representatives, but Berks, Luzerne, Monroe, because all of them in some way, shape, or form touch this airport, and it's important to have all of them when they go into their caucuses to talk on behalf of the airport. So It's amazing when you have these discussions, how many of them say, from Monroe County or from, up in the Scranton area, use the airport. So that was a very productive meeting that we had. On March 30th, we had a meeting with Congressman Jeff Van Drew out of New Jersey. Why was that important? Because we're working with Philadelphia and Atlantic City through the FAA reauthorization bill, to get those bus passengers counted as airline passengers. Susan Wild, our Congresswoman, was on the Transportation Committee. She's no longer on the Transportation Committee, but Jeff Van Drew is, and this is important to Philadelphia and important to Atlantic City as well. So using that regional effort and the growth of potential more landline service, not necessarily here per se, but at Williamsport, Lancaster, or other surrounding airports, we thought it was important to speak to certainly our federal legislators as they work through the reauthorization bill. There's discussions on it. From a perspective of the debt ceiling, that's really the priority right now. So, it's just one of those things that's going to be in motion over the next few months. On April 28th, we were at the state capitol to meet with the new Secretary of PennDOT, Mike Carroll, as well as Meredith Bajica, who's the Deputy Secretary of the Multimodal Transportation. We met with Danielle Okai, who's the Deputy Chief of Staff for Economic Development in the Governor's Office, as well as Senator Wayne Langerholt's office. He's the Chairman of the Senate Transportation Committee. And then TSA Checkpoint Terminal Connector Tours, we had Senator Casey's Regional Manager, as well as Congressman Wild's District Director, and then Anthony McCluskey, the Director of the Bureau of Aviation from PennDOT, was here. He's been instrumental in helping this airport and a lot of different projects, and the PennDOT Bureau as a whole has been very, very supportive. So he likes to get out and see where we are in the progress of the project that we have here and hear about more things that we're going to do. So great engagement over the last few months from a legislative level. Darren showed you this, and this is really, as I mentioned the last time in January, we've been so focused on the connector that we've now shifted to a different phase, and that's this phase right here, which is, again, the airport entrance moving, now the hotel, and then that road infrastructure that we need. There's been a lot of excitement around it from a state representative and a state senator perspective, from our delegation here in the Lehigh Valley. So in order to get that funding, you want that buy-in, and we got the 1.15 million, and Paul, to your question here, all of the different ways that we're looking to improve that road landscape in order to help with the hotel development. So getting the 1.15 million was certainly very, very positive from DCED. On the outskirts of that, during that meeting, why we were with Mike Carroll, obviously, to talk about future infrastructure projects, but this PennDOT multimodal application that we put in for more funding for that road infrastructure to make sure, on top of the RACP, which is site work, that we're able to accomplish what we want to accomplish. Announcement expected in the near future. They're doing budget talks now. I think a lot of things were in kind of a mode where they were waiting for that special election that was going on down in Delaware County to understand the House of Representatives and who was going to be in control. But the meeting with Secretary Carroll went very, very well as Deputy Secretary Bajica. So they thought we had a very competitive application, and we'll see over the next few weeks if we're able to secure the PennDOT multimodal grant. The Airport Land Development Zone, the ALDIZ, final stages of approval and designation process on 300 acres of property at ABE. This has been a process. I appreciate certainly Ryan and Tom in that way, because we've had to go through a lot of different phases and information exchanges with PennDOT. It's unique to us because it's not as if we have just one big parcel of land that we're going to use. We have the Majestic property in Northampton County. We've got the frontage property here in Lehigh County with a hotel and some of those other properties, as well as air cargo development. So we're kind of all over the place, which is great because it shows development opportunity. But again, I spoke to PennDOT yesterday, and we're at the end, which is good. So this will be the $2,100 tax credit per net new job created for a maximum of 10 years. And it should help with some of our projects that we're looking to do here on the property. Did anybody have any questions on the governmental side?
Does that apply to the hotel?
Yes, it's on that property. That's included in the acreage. From a community what we've done on community engagement is we have some new things on the radar. One is we have the National Transportation Safety Board training seminar and workshop, which is going to be held on June the 2nd. We have the NTSB coming in, and 58 registered for an instructional session, 30 participant for an accident scenario workshop. That's airport employees, but it's also our regional mutual aid partners. bless you, which is great, because, you know, in a situation where something happens, we're all gonna be working together on this, and everybody needs to stay in their lane, and that's really the message that Peter Knudsen and Lauren will bring. So we're excited to have this. We've never hosted the NTSB to do this training. So, you know, June the 2nd, we'll have a busy room here, and hopefully everybody will take something, not just from an airport perspective for our regional partners, but they can use this for anything they may experience down the line, whether it's rail or something that happens outside of the airport. But it's great to bring everybody into one.
Other airports coming to it here, or just for you?
Just us.
Just us, and we did put it out to other airports. We did, you know, reach out to, you know, regional airports, but a lot of mutual aid wanted to come and hear that. We went to the military share program at Second Harvest Food Bank. 880 boxes were packed. There were 15 LNAA staff. That's the limit that they wanted, 15, because we did it with Guardian Life and the Olympus Corporation of the Americas. And we had frontline staff. That was the best part. We had the fire department there. We had the maintenance department there. We had aviation services, the FBO. We had a great representation from frontline staff that were there to help do this. So we're looking to do this again in the future. And it was very, very successful for us to get out in the community. And it's a new program that we learned about last year at the Community Action Committee of the Lehigh Valley when they had their annual meeting. So we look forward to getting back there. Everybody really had a great time. It was a very positive atmosphere. Lehigh Valley Plane Pull, in partnership with the Special Olympics and FedEx. This was announced. They had done a plane pull here years ago. It's been a little over a decade. But yeah, we were approached by Special Olympics to have this plane pull on Saturday, October 7th. They're looking to have, you know, teams of 25 try to pull an Airbus 300 approximately 12 feet. There was a practice pull for the Special Olympics athletes that were there and staff, and they did it, which was awesome to see. So it's really a great opportunity again for us to expand. We do a lot of different programs with organizations, but to have the airport be able to host this event, they handle a lot of the registration, and FedEx actually now has a branch that handles plane pulls. Back in the day, I think you guys were the ones that were, we're done locally, but FedEx now has somebody that comes in. So it's really gonna be a great event. So if anybody's interested, the team registration's at lvplanepull.org. TSA PreCheck open enrollment's coming up July 3rd through the 7th. We're gonna have the RV back out in the parking lot. About 400 spots will be available. I'll email that to the Board of Governors, but the registration will begin sometime next week. They usually do about a month out. But one of the things we wanted to point out, and sometimes individuals ages 17 and under may accompany a TSA PreCheck enrolled parent or guardian through the security screening process. Sometimes people don't know that because, again, when you're signing up for TSA PreCheck, it's usually you and your wife and somebody else. But if you do have a child ages 17 and under, and that's new, that they can accompany you through the TSA PreCheck line. So even more, and again, I've said this over and over again, TSA wants this. The more people that get enrolled in PreCheck, the better for them. So I think they just continue to improve the program. And then a fear flying seminars. We did have one on May the 8th, and we had a full class of 12. Again, it was a very successful session again. Really the big part of it is definitely getting on that aircraft and giving people the opportunity to put some of the things they learn into practice. They do the classroom session first, and then they come in and they go on the plane. So we had a full class, and it continues to grow, I think. More and more we have them. We have people really on a wait list in order to come in and do this. So we'll have another session on September 2023. We're figuring out the date yet to get all the parties involved, but we're certainly looking forward to that. Anybody have any questions?
Questions for Colin? Well, thank you, great presentation, appreciate it.
Yeah.
So, all important functions. Okay, I think we're up to, let's see, new business. Anyone have any new business? I have one item, but everybody else first. Okay, hang on. There we go, thank you, Tom. Okay, committee assignments. So we put out the email about a month ago in regard to interest in committees. I heard from a couple of people. So the committees basically will be pretty much unchanged from prior year with just 2 additions. So for the business committee, Justin's agreed to continue to chair it, so you'll chair it again for 23-24. Committee members will be Don Gottschall, Jim Irwin, Jeff Madskin, Glenn Briedman, Chris Worley, and we're adding Ann Baum to that committee. She's got a good history with with the organization. She was on the board for 5 years or 10?
She was on the previous 5.
Okay, yep, she has 5 years' experience and is back. So that will comprise the Business Committee. Finance Committee will be Frank Jering. Frank's agreed to chair again. Paul Anthony, Robert Brooks, myself, Ron Heckman, Larry Hamburger, Mike Stershik, and we're going to put Jonathan Strauss on finance as well. Give Jonathan the ability to learn about the airport authority, learn the financial side of it, and then potentially get him involved in other activities as he goes forward as well. He's a new board member.
Jonathan Strauss?
Yeah.
Yes. Haven't heard that name yet.
Yeah, so since Matt Turk, since Mayor had basically stepped off the board, Lehigh County replaced him with Jonathan Strauss. And Jonathan was in just previously, we had an orientation for him, and he was not able to make committee today, but so that I believe he will be able to attend board
Well, he'll be at the board meeting.
on Tuesday.
Yeah.
All right, so he's at Lehigh County, right?
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah, replacing Matt.
Replacement from.
Oh, from that side of the fence, okay, got
Yes.
it. Good side. Well, good side.
Okay, and then exec will be myself as chair, Glenn as vice chair, Justin as secretary treasurer, Mike Stershik, Lehigh County rep, and Paul Anthony, the Northampton County rep. So those will be the makeup of the committees. They go into effect as of now. So we're good for next month's meeting, and I want to thank everyone. It is great to see so many people here that aren't committee members, but they come anyway, and that's been fantastic. I think that's made the process even more effective. Frankly, it also shortens up the board meetings because everybody hears it here. So there is a side benefit, but that engagement is crucial because we all bring different areas of expertise to the table. And the more often we bring all of that expertise, the better off we are. So I do thank everyone for that. Well, let's see, I don't believe we have a need for exec session. No update on the egregious stormwater tax?
No
Okay.
update. The appeal is chugging along.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, got it. Okay, with that, then I'd entertain a motion to adjourn. So moved by Mike, we're good. Thanks, everybody. See you Tuesday at noon. See you Tuesday at noon.
Have a great weekend.
No, have one.